Good evening, everyone. If I could have your attention, before we get started tonight, I'd like to welcome Pastor Jerry Dockery of Crabapple First Baptist Church to lead us in invocation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let us pray. Come to us, Father of God, our peace. Come with your healing, your reconciling power. Come that fear may be cast out by love, that weapons may be replaced by trust, that violence may give way to gentleness. Come to us, God of peace. Come to us, God of justice. Come with your righteous judgments and your mercy. Come that we may hear the cries of the oppressed in every land, and that we may see the suffering of the poor in our own land. May we return to the way of righteousness and compassion. Come to us, God of love, with your extravagant kindness and your goodness, that we may see you in the people of every race and culture, that we may embrace you in the lonely, the bereaved, and the rejected, and that we may be an accepting and caring people. Come to us, God of hope. Come with your promises. Come in your mysterious presence. Come that we may marvel at your faithfulness in past generations, and that we may celebrate the new things you're doing among us today, that we may be your people on your journey to your kingdom. Father, we pray that you would bless this gathering and all these conversations, that you would fill these leaders and constituents with wisdom and grace. May we all endeavor to be honorable in your sight and in your presence. For we ask it in Jesus' name.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend Dockery. Okay, I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Milton City Council for Monday, May 16th, 2016 to order. Sudi, if you will please call roll and read general announcements.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll be happy to call roll for the May 16th, 2016 regular meeting. I would like to remind those in attendance to please silence all cell phones at this time. Those attending the meeting who would like to provide public comment, either during the public hearing or during the call for public comment, you are required to complete a public comment card prior to speaking on an item. There is no public comment for consent agenda items or items under first presentation. Those called to speak will be taken in the order that the speaker cards are received by the city clerk prior to the beginning of tonight's meeting. All speakers will identify themselves by name, address, and organization, if applicable. The City Council may allow public comment on either an agenda item or general public comment from a representative of such an organized group or association, provided that the individual shall file a notarized affidavit that they have the authority to speak on behalf of said organization on a form provided by the city clerk prior to the agenda item being called. Demonstration of any sort within the chamber is prohibited, so please refrain from any applause, cheering, booing, outbursts, or dialogue with any person speaking. Please show the same respect to the person speaking that you will expect to receive yourself. Anyone in violation will be asked to leave. As I call roll this evening, please confirm your attendance. Mayor Joe Lockwood.
Here.
Councilmember Karen Thurman.
Here.
Councilmember Matt Coons. Here. Councilmember Bill Luss.
Here.
Councilmember Bert Hewitt.
Here.
Councilmember Joe Longoria.
Here.
Councilmember Rick Morrick is absent but is on his
I
way.
believe, yes, he's on his way. He'll be here.
This evening we are honored to have the Sons of the American Revolution lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Would everyone please rise?
To the right, face. Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag
always an honor to have the Sons of the American Revolution here with us tonight, so I appreciate you guys being here. And want to welcome everybody else here tonight. All right, Sudie, if you'll please call our next item.
Our next item is the approval of the meeting agenda. This is agenda item number 16110.
Okay. I think one thing we want to do, if it's all right with the council, is to move the resolutions of the DRB and Planning Commission board members up to after the approval of the agenda. I'd also like to add an executive session to discuss personnel. Anything else, staff? Okay, I'll ask for a motion on the agenda.
Dr. Goodall, forgive me. We do need an executive session in addition to discuss personnel, to discuss potential litigation, and I would also ask that we add after the executive session to come out and discuss the Ivy versus City of Milton settlement agreement.
Okay. We've got two more items in on executive session, so we'll open up for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda with the items added.
Thank you.
Second.
A motion by Councilmember Hewitt, second from Councilmember Thurman. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay. All right, let's see. New business items 1 and 2 we have elected to move. So, Sudie, if you will call those items.
First item that was moved was consideration of a resolution appointing a member to the City of Milton Design Review Board for District 2, Post 2. Agenda item number 16116. Mayor Joe Lockwood.
Okay, I think I'll turn this one over to Councilmember Kuntz.
Yeah, and he said he was going to be here. I don't see Mike Stevens here, but he is on his way. Mike Stevens has been a Milton resident from the beginning and very active with regards to our city and our direction. He has been a member of the Design Review Board before, but has not been on it in several years. However, given an opportunity with an opening that has come up, he would gladly sit in the Design Review Board case again. He is a realtor in the Milton area and looking forward to serving our city in that capacity.
Okay. Someone want to make a motion?
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve the resolution appointing a member to the City of Milton Design Review Board for District 2, Post 2, Mike Stevens.
Second.
Okay, I've got a motion and approval from Councilmember Thurman, second by Councilmember Longoria. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimous, Sudie, and we can just swear Mike in at next available time, or if he does get here.
Sure.
And then I'll move on to our next person, and I'll turn that over to Bill Lusk.
Thank you, Mayor.
Did you want me to call the item?
Sure, Sudie, go ahead.
Consideration of a resolution appointing a member to the City of Milton Planning Commission for District 2, Post 1. Agenda item number 16117. Councilmember Bill Lusk.
Thank you, Sudie and Mayor. About a month or so ago, or 2 months ago, I reluctantly received the resignation of Noel Carpenter from the Planning Commission. But I was more than fortunate to find a very capable replacement for him, and he's here tonight, and I'd propose his approval. And his name is Wilson Borden. Wilson lives on Hampton Bluff Drive in Milton. He moved to Milton in 2003. He's a lifelong resident of Georgia, grew up in Dunwoody. He has 4 children, 2 of them with him here tonight, Parker and Robin, and along with Wilson's wife, Marianne. Wilson has his own business in actually in Cherokee County. It's the Erosion Company, and he has had that since 1998. He's directed erosion and sedimentation control compliances on over 5,000 residential developments 8,500 commercial developments, 150,000 individual residential units, and hundreds of miles of roads and utility projects. He's a graduate of the University of Georgia with a bachelor's in real estate development, and also has an MBA from the North Avenue Trade School, Georgia Tech. He's certified as a professional in erosion and sedimentation control. He's a certified plan reviewer and a certified plan designer. He's fluent in Spanish and English, and it goes on and on. He's a member of several industry organizations, the Greater Atlanta Home Builders Association. He was a former board member of Milton Grows Green, and other membership groups include Georgia Rivers Alliance, South Face, U.S. Building Council, Etowah River, Planning Commission, and Zoo Atlanta. He's also been awarded the Atlanta Business Chronicle Pacesetter Award multiple times. So at this time, I'd like to propose Wilson Borden as my replacement on the Planning Commission for District 2, Post 1.
Okay, I'll open up for a motion.
I'll make a motion to consideration of a resolution appointing Wilson Borden to the City of Milton Planning Commission for District 2, Post 1.
Second.
Okay, I've got a motion for approval from Councilmember Hewitt, second from Councilmember Coons. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. So at this point, and I see Mr. Stevens has arrived, and do you want to know the bad news or the second bad news? First bad news is you missed your vote, and the second bad news is you got in, you got approved, so and your resume was even longer than Mr. Borden. So, if you guys want to come up, we can swear them in now, both Mr. Stevens and Mr. Borden. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear and affirm
I do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will faithfully perform the duties of
that I will faithfully perform the duties of
the Planning Commission member
the Planning Commission member
of the city,
of the city,
and that I will support and defend the charter thereof,
and that I will support and defend the charter thereof,
as well as the Constitution
as well as the Constitution
and laws of the state of Georgia
and laws of the state of Georgia
and of the United States of America.
and of the United States of America.
Thank you very much. We'll get suited. Okay, Sudi, and obviously you'll note that Councilmember Morgan is here now. Next item is public comment. Public comment is a time for citizens to share information with the mayor and city council and to provide input and opinions on any matter that is not scheduled for its own public hearing during today's meeting. There's no discussion on items on the consent agenda or first presentation from the public or from council. Each citizen who chooses to participate in public comment must complete a comment card and submit it to the city clerk. Please remember there's not a time to engage the mayor or members of city council in conversation. When your name is called, please come forward and speak into the microphone stating your name and address for the record, and you'll have 5 minutes for remarks. So, Sudi, do we have any general public comment?
Yes, sir, we do. We have 3.
Okay.
And the first one comes from Mr. Tim Becker.
Tim Becker, 15625 Canterbury Chase. Tonight I want to speak to a new rezoning. Yesterday I received a notice of rezoning for a property access from Donegal Lane, a dead-end road in Vickery Creek subdivision, which itself was rezoned using CUP rezoning in 2008. The property in question is currently zoned AG1. Once again, a developer is coming to the city with a profit maximization scheme. Once again, a developer is asking for an extension of sewer. Once again, a developer is asking for higher density than is currently allowed under AG1 zoning. Once again, we are witnessing a rezoning process that disregards the prerogatives of citizens. Consider the fact that this notice of rezoning was issued a mere 9 days before the community zoning information meeting, and no information has been provided with the notice, and none could be found at the city's website. How are citizens supposed to respond in such a short period of time and with no information? This is unfair. I am noticing a pattern here. The community gets short notice and little information. Of course, this will suppress attendance, which the developer and some council members will later cite as evidence of community support. The results are higher density, sewer extension, leapfrogging from a previous CUP rezoning. It is the same old story in Milton. The drip, drip, drip of sewer and density creep. Developers get the goodies and citizens pay the price. Once again, I urge council to conduct a comprehensive evaluation of our zoning process with the goal of reforming the zoning process to make it citizen-centric. Today, I actually walked Vickery Creek subdivision and distributed flyers. I spoke at length with 3 residents. They are looking at the prospect of construction traffic going through their neighborhood for the next several years. They are looking at homes that do not comport with the architecture and size of homes in their neighborhood. And there are other numerous issues. They are rightfully concerned about safety and their property values. I urge council to be proactive and seek out nearby residents to hear their concerns. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sudi, please call the next speaker.
Our next speaker is Miss Laura Venture.
I live at 1060 Birmingham Road, Milton. Mayor and council, I want to bring to your attention an important matter related to city ethics in Milton. I've recognized over the past couple of years that complaints by citizens are not handled even-handedly by the city. My most recent experience is a complaint my husband made regarding the behavior of an appointed city employee or city member. My husband submitted a complaint about the incident that happened just before a council meeting in November. In this interaction, an appointed city board member approached me, made false accusations about my property, argued with me about their veracity, and stated he was against us getting our variance approved. While this may not have been very significant if this person were just another citizen, the fact is this man had the power to actually impede our variance. This abuse of power should have elevated concerns by the city officials as to possible ethical problems and political corruption. However, just the opposite happened. The complaint was sent to the city at the beginning of December, and it is now May 17th. Last week, we just received a response from the interim city manager stating his limited options to address the situation, none of which included investigation. I'm aware there were other complaints submitted to the city during the same time period regarding a city committee member. One complaint was taken so seriously that the council would not approve the new officers without investigation. Other complaints by citizens also were thoroughly investigated. So I'm left to wonder why some citizens' complaints are investigated and others are not. It appears in the city of Milton, some citizens' complaints are treated fairly, while others are minimized or ignored completely. I noticed this also applies to citizen complaints about the emails that were anonymously leaked and distributed in last October. These emails circumvented the open records process, were not redacted, and were selectively chosen to undermine the conservation subdivision ordinance. This is a serious breach of ethics, lack of transparency, and demonstrated exceedingly poor judgment by the person who did it. Clearly, the person who released the emails knew this action was not ethical, as he or she chose to release the emails anonymously in the middle of the night and to circumvent the open records process. The only people who had contact with the emails were the city manager, attorney, mayor, and council, so the list of offenders is limited. The status of the potential offenders indicates this action is also an abuse of power by a city employee or official, yet an investigation was never conducted to identify the person. Again, there are red flags of ethics violations and political corruption with no investigation. From my experience, I've learned investigations do not happen unless requested by the mayor or council. If this does not happen, there is no process for citizens to hold officials and board and committee members accountable other than a formal ethics complaint. Ethics complaints are expensive, public, and are a very involved process that requires citizens to make accusations of ethics violations in writing and provide proof. Then, 3 attorneys subpoena witnesses, listen to testimony, examine the evidence of the situation, and give a recommendation to the council. The problem with this process is that it requires the citizens to provide evidence of wrongdoing when the person has no access to investigate the behind-the-doors workings of the city. In this case, there's no way to know exactly what happened and why without an investigation being conducted. From the outside, this situation looks as though the past city manager intentionally chose to investigate some complaints while ignoring mine, even after repeated attempts to bring the issue to his attention. I don't think this is unreasonable to ask why this happened. I've waited almost 6 months for a response from the city with no answers. As a result, at this time, I'm filing an ethics complaint regarding this incident and subsequent lack of action on the part of the city. This is not my choice, and I do not believe it is my responsibility to investigate the situation. However, my complaint is serious, and the city's response is completely unacceptable. Abuse of power at any level should always be taken seriously. Intimidation and bullying are not acceptable regardless of who the offender or complainant are or how decision makers may feel about either person. I'm not going to back down or go away. If the city leadership is not going to hold the offenders accountable, the citizens have no other choice than to take this route to assure ethical decision making and behavior.
Okay. Thank you. City, if you'll please call the next speaker.
Our final general comment comes from Francia Linden.
Hey, my name is Francia Linden. I live at 14810 East Bluff Road in Milton. And I just wanted to make a comment about the April 25th meeting. I thought I was here for the long, arduous meeting, and I thought it was an incredible example of democracy at work. And I wanted to thank you all for taking the time to research the background that was necessary to rule on a complex issue, that you didn't simply rely on public comment, that you went the extra mile to understand what the different issues were and to get facts that substantiated or supported them or made them minimize them in any way. And I thought that you did a really good job at interacting with the applicant and getting answers to questions that you had and coming to a resolution. I think with all democracies, there has to be a point where some compromise is made, and that night proved a really good example of coming to a compromise so that issues could be resolved. And I just wanted to thank you all for sticking it out and for doing your job.
Thank you. Okay, is that all our general public comments, Sue?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we could move on to our consent agenda.
Our first item on consent agenda is approval of the financial statements for the period ending April 2016. Agenda item number 16111. Next is approval of an agreement between the City of Milton and Special Events Network, LLC, for the movies at the Flicks and Food Trucks Summer Event Series on June 4th, July 2nd, and August 6th, 2016. Agenda item number 16112. Our third consent agenda item this evening is approval of a professional services agreement between the City of Milton and PSD Software, LLC, to provide asset management and work order software. Agenda item number 16113. Our fourth and final consent agenda item this evening is approval of a professional services agreement between the City of Milton and Phase 3 Marketing and Communications for brand implementation, website, and graphic support. Agenda item number 16114.
Mayor, I'll move to approve the consent agenda as prepared by staff.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Luss, second by Councilmember Kutz, and approval of the consent agenda. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, we can move on, Sudi, to reports and presentations.
Our first item this evening is a proclamation recognizing Memorial Day. This is being presented by Councilmember Bill Luss.
Thank you, Sudi. At this time, I'd like to have the SAR color guard come up front and center. And we'll present this proclamation to Piedmont Chapter, SAR. This is our last regular meeting for this month. Memorial Day is 2 weeks from today, so it may seem a little premature, but this is our last opportunity this month to present this proclamation, even though we will also read it again on Memorial Day. So this is a proclamation for Memorial Day. Whereas Memorial Day was first officially proclaimed on May 5th, 1868, by General John Logan in his General Order number 11. And in 1968, by act of Congress, it was determined that the holiday would be observed on the last Monday in May. And whereas, from the opening battles of the American Revolution through the turmoil of the Civil War to World War I, World War II, Korea, and Vietnam, to the Persian Gulf, and today's operations in the War on Terror in Afghanistan, Iraq, and all around the world. The members of our military have built a tradition of honorable and faithful service. And whereas, as we observe Memorial Day, we remember the more than 1 million Americans who have died to preserve our freedom, the more than 140,000 citizens who were prisoners of war, and all those who were declared missing in action. We also honor our veterans for their dedication to America and their sacrifice. And whereas we have honor and privileges of living in a free country, and Georgia has a rich history of great leaders who died fighting for our great nation. Today, all who wear the uniform of the United States are serving at a crucial hour in history. And each has answered a great call to serve our nation on the front lines of freedom. Let us pray for the safety and strength of our troops and for God's blessing on them and their families, and for those who have lost loved ones. And whereas on this Memorial Day we honor our fallen soldiers in their commitment to our country and their legacy of patriotism and sacrifices of many men and women who answered the nation's call to duty and fought with honor and valor, and in the end gave the ultimate sacrifice to safeguard the rights of all Americans. And whereas by giving their lives in this cause of freedom, these heroes have protected and inspired all Americans, and we are truly grateful for their sacrifice. And whereas the citizens of Milton join with people across the nation in remembrance of those who died while courageously serving their country during war. Now, therefore, we, the Mayor and City Council of the City of Milton, Georgia, hereby dedicate and proclaim Monday, May 13th, 2016, as Memorial Day in the City of Milton, and call this observance to the attention of all of our citizens. We all go down front.
Thank y'all for coming. We really appreciate it. Thank y'all. Good to see you. Thank you for coming. Always good to see you.
And just further to that proclamation, just another reminder that everyone's invited to Memorial Day ceremony, 10 o'clock Monday morning, May the 30th at Freedom Park over here in the corner. Hope to see everybody.
All right, thank you, Bill. Sudie, if you'll please call the next presentation item.
The next item is presentation of the City of Milton fiscal year 2015 annual audit. This is being presented by Adam Fraley from Malden and Jenkins.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm Adam Fraley with Malden and Jenkins. We're here this evening to present the annual audit, the external audit for the city for the year ended September 30th, 2015. And you should have as part of your, I believe your electronic packets, if you will, the city's comprehensive annual financial report. I'll often refer to that as a CAFR, and also the what we call the auditor's discussion and analysis, which is kind of the results of the audit and the opinion that we rendered, as well as some of our required communications. I'm going to pretty much go by the auditor's discussion and analysis, the summary there, so if you want to follow along with me, and if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to stop me and I'll try to answer those. In the auditor's discussion analysis, I'll call it the AD&A, you'll see on page 2 is information about the firm and our governmental practice, and how that has changed over the last year, and the growth we've seen. The governmental practice is a specialty niche area within our firm. We're a full service CPA firm that happens to specialize in government, state and local government audits and financial reporting. You'll see there that of all the cities that we audit about 300 governments in total. About 75 of those are cities. You'll see myself down there at the bottom. I was the engagement lead partner. We also had an engagement manager named Tim Lyons that was out here during the conduct of field work. Turning over, I'm going to flip over to page 4. This page here really is kind of the bottom line. It talks a little bit about the responsibilities of the city and its management. It talks about the responsibilities of us as auditors. Talks a little bit about some of the changes that you'll notice in this year's CAFR as well. The CAFR is the responsibility of management. It's the responsibility of the city. Annually, the city is required through its finance department to put together a financial report that is submitted to the state of Georgia within 6 months of its year end and is audited by an external CPA. The city has put that together and is responsible for that, and our opinion, or our responsibility is to render an opinion on those financial statements. We did render such an opinion. We rendered an unmodified audit opinion, which means that, which is, in layman's terms, we kind of oftentimes call a clean opinion. We did have one finding that was required to be reported as part of our audit, but we did render a clean opinion, which means that based on our test work, our audit test work, that we believe that these financial statements are materially are correct materially for the year ended September 30th, 2015. One thing there, you'll notice under the emphasis of matter paragraph on page 4, this year, and I'll talk a little bit about later in this presentation, I'll point out kind of the number impact of what it was, but the city was required to implement a new accounting standard this year. You may have been aware, and I know we've talked about it in the past in our presentations, is GASB 68 has to do with pension standards and recording the city's net pension liability when it comes to defined benefit pension arrangements. So that was required to be implemented this year and did have an impact and change on, if you compare this year's financial statements to last year's financial statements, that is one change you'll see. On page 5, this talks a little bit about a CAFR. I've referred to a CAFR. A CAFR includes additional information above what's required in just an annual financial report. It has an introductory section, which has got the letter of transmittal. It's got an organizational chart. It's got a directory of officials. It also includes in there your certificate from past CAFRs that were submitted to the Government Finance Officers Association, which received the award for excellence in financial reporting. A CAFR also includes a statistical section, which a lot of hard work goes into this section and shows the history. You know, now that the city, you know, was established back in 2006, and it shows that 10-year history of the city on financial and non-financial statistics that GASB, which is the standard-setting body for governmental reporting, has said that should be to include in a CAFR. So a lot of hard work in there. If you'll flip to page 6, it talks a little bit about that certificate of achievement. The city, since it's been incorporated, has sought and been awarded that certificate for excellence in financial reporting. Again, it's above and beyond what's required in the state of Georgia, and it's not the norm in the state of Georgia. So a real pat on the back to your finance department for putting together such a good-looking document and including such good information and meeting those standards and getting that certificate. So that is good. On page 7, this talks a little bit about some of the financial highlights for the year. Down towards the bottom where it refers to government-wide, this is essentially the city as a whole. You know, all of its governmental funds that's broken up in the financial statements, it's all put together here in this government-wide look. From a government-wide standpoint, the city's total assets were about $98 million, offset by its total liabilities of about $18 million. This resulted in a net position, which is the overall equity, if you will, of the city of about $80 million. Of course, as with any city, a lot of that equity is tied up into infrastructure and other capital assets, roads, bridges, etc. Let's see, $55 million of that $80 million is in those type of assets. Also, another $300,000 is considered restricted for future use, leaving approximately $24.7 million of unrestricted net position, which is available for future spending. So you can kind of see there. And on the next page, at the top of page 8, it talks about that change in the net position or change in the equity. For the year ended September 30th, 2015, the change in net position was a positive $7 million. So you added to that equity by about $7 million during the year. So you'll see that. Going on down on page 8, the general fund is the main operating fund of the city. And so just a quick highlights here. You'll see in the graph there of its revenue sources, 75% of the city's revenues made up of property taxes and sales taxes. You'll see a large portion there, 8.7 million in sales taxes and 11.5 million in property taxes. And then you can see in the pie chart some of the other revenues as well. On the next page, you'll see that a large portion of the general fund expenditures are made up of public safety expenditures, and then you can see in the pie chart there the other categories and how they fit in as far as the expenditures of the city. At the bottom of page 9, you'll see a comparison of general fund revenues, expenditures, and transfers. And you'll see that the revenues and other financial sources, which may be transfers into the fund, versus expenditures and other financing uses, which the general fund, I believe, had about $11 million transferred out to other funds for uses in other funds. You can see that the expenditures and transfers out exceeded the revenues transfers in for the general fund this year, and that was a planned use of fund balance, this year. So you can see that there, and you can see the 5-year trend going back on that. On page 10, you can see net change in fund balance, which is kind of like the net income, if you will, or the addition or deletion, or the use, rather, of fund balance over the past 5 years. And you'll see this year the city used about $1 million of its fund balance. And you'll see how that trended over the last 5 years, whether it be adding to fund balance or use of that fund balance. At the end of the day, flipping over to page 11, this is a chart that I kind of always highlight a little bit. Oftentimes what's compared is, okay, how's your fund balance look? The health of that fund balance. How does it look compared to your annual expenditures? So you can see at the top of page 11, you can see how fund balance in the red line has trended over the past 5 years, and you can see for 2015 it's a little over $10 million. And then you can see your annual expenditures are about $16.7 million there. So you can kind of see how much fund balance you have of annual expenditures. Oftentimes I know rating agencies and so forth will like to see 2 to 4 months of fund balance, unassigned fund balance of annual expenditures there. And then you'll see down on the table below there the percentages over the past 5 years of kind of how that fund balance has behaved as compared to your annual expenditures. And you'll see it's about 36% for 2015, at September 30th, 2015. Okay, flipping over to page 12, and I'm just going to describe what page 12 and 13 are, but not going into too much detail here. They're basically a Cliff Notes version of the footnotes to the financial statements. So as you're looking at those, you can refer back here as to what each of those footnotes are trying to say. Starting on page 14, this is our required communications. They go through things about any kind of accounting policy changes or financial statement disclosures, any significant difficulties encountered during the audit. Which I'm happy to say that we did not have any difficulties during the audit. We did have some adjustments that I'll mention on the next page. Audit adjustments, accounting type adjustments that were reflected in the CAFR. They were accepted by management and posted to the general ledger system of the city. But we didn't have any trouble with the audit. The management was completely cooperative, getting us everything we need and forthcoming with everything we needed for the audit. So we certainly appreciate that. On the next page, I mentioned adjustments. We did have some adjustments. Again, they were posted to the general ledger of the city and included in this comprehensive annual financial report to make sure that it is accurately presenting the financial results. Now going over to page 17, we only had one finding. This results from restatements in the city's financial statements related to changes in lease documents and When those changes occur, sometimes they cause changes in how you should treat it related to accounting. And a change in lease term that went unnoticed caused a change from it being an operating lease to a capital lease, which is accounting terminology but requires different accounting treatment. And so we adjusted for that this year, as well as some revenue recognition adjustments related to the city's grants. But you'll see, you can see the details of that finding there. That's the only finding that we did have. The next several pages, and it probably scares you looking at them initially, hoping I'm not going through each one of them, which I'm not. But you certainly could look through these if you have trouble sleeping at night. These are all the new accounting standards and auditing standards that are coming out and in the pipeline right now. I certainly always want to keep everyone abreast of what is coming out, so it's there for you to look over and read. For example, the first one there is GASB 68 I mentioned earlier. GASB 68 is that new pension standard, and it required the reporting on the statement of net position, the net pension liability for the first time this year that the city has related to that pension plan. So that was adopted and that was incorporated into this year's statement. So that was a big change. And then as well as other changes coming down the pipeline. So, and certainly, and if you have any questions about those, of course, the finance department or myself, always available and happy to try to answer any of those questions as you look over those. But that concludes my presentation. If you've got any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer those.
Any questions? All right. We appreciate all your hard work, Adam. Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight to make the presentation.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Good job, Stacy and your staff, too, all of our staff, but good job. Okay. See if we could move on to our first presentation item.
This is consideration of an amendment to the charter of the City of Milton, Georgia, for the purpose of clarifying the income limitations applicable to the homestead tax exemptions available to seniors age 65 and over and disabled persons with moderate to low incomes. This is agenda item number 16115.
Okay. Do I have a motion on the first presentation?
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the reading of the first presentation.
Second the motion.
I have a motion by Councilmember Kuntz, second by Councilmember Lusk. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimous.
Mr. Mayor, that just for the record to note that will be coming back to the council on June 6th and June 20th.
Okay. All right. Well, Sudi, we have no items under public hearing or zoning agenda, so if we could move to unfinished business, if you'll please call the next item.
The next item is consideration of an ordinance to amend Milton City Code, Chapter 18, Emergency Management Services, agenda item number 16107. First presentation was heard at the May 2nd City Council meeting. Mr. Matt Marietta.
Good evening. When we deployed in 2007, we deployed with police and fire combined in a joint public safety department. Chris Lagerbloom was the director. In 2009, when he became the city manager, we separated those two departments and had a police chief and a fire chief. Shortly thereafter, we went through and changed all of the city ordinances that were based on public safety department, pulled all that language out. For the fun of it, a couple weeks ago, I was reading city policy and discovered, much to my chagrin, that I missed one. And believe it or not, it's the emergency management section in city ordinance. So this change in ordinance simply recognizes the fact that we no longer have a public safety department. There's no public safety director, and it separates the two departments in the language in the ordinance. I'd be happy to answer any questions y'all have.
Any questions for Matt? All right, appreciate that. You bring that to our attention. I'll open up for a motion.
Make a motion to approve agenda item 16-107.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Hewitt, second from Councilmember Thurman. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay. Sudi, if you will please call the next item.
Next item is consideration of a motion to override the mayor's veto regarding RZ 1602, BC 1601, agenda item number 16118. Mr. Ken Gerard.
Ken, can I, before you get started, could clarify Councilmember Thurman's position of recusal?
Right, I will, and so hopefully I'll clarify a few things this evening. First of all, Councilmember Thurman has previously recused and identified the reasons for that recusal. She has recused and abstained. The rules governing the conduct of meetings and the ethical propriety with respect to abstentions allows a recused member to stay at their station so long as the meeting is occurring in public, which this one is. So the recusal would stand. For the record, Councilmember Thurman is allowed to remain at her station, otherwise not participate.
Okay. Karen, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Nope.
Okay. Okay, go ahead, Ken.
Mr. Mayor, I have a presentation. I wasn't sure if the council wanted to hear public comment first or whether we wanted me to make a presentation first.
Yeah, I'm fine either way. If we want to hear public comment first and then make the
Because I
presentation.
could hopefully maybe address some concerns if the comments come first.
Okay. Sudi, do we have any public comment on this item?
We do, sir. We have 4 public comment cards. The first one comes from Vance McGaughy.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor and Council, first of all, my name is Vance McGahee, and I do live in Roswell, 255 Meadowwood Drive. The reason I'm here, the property that we own is also in Roswell. And when you look on the map, we're the little blip that sticks out, and we're surrounded on 3 sides by Milton. And our property is adjacent to the property that's in question, the McVeigh property and WJ's. 2 weeks ago, on April 25th, when we had the long council meeting, I just wanted to say I was greatly impressed by Councilperson Kuntz, your presentation and your thoughtful research into what a true conservation subdivision is, and how you rightly pointed out that we all want to preserve the land. We all love the picturesque scene of the horse farm and the house sitting back on the 10 acres and the fence in front. I wish it could be. We could take a click and do a stop time and keep it that way. But as he so adeptly pointed out, that once the people who own that horse farm, the parents, and they might pass away and the kids inherit it, there is nothing to stop that the next day from that beautiful idyllic scene to be turned into a subdivision. And he had photos to show that. And as you go up 140 on Arnold Mill, you can see the slow progression of what has happened. There wasn't really a way, or that we knew of a way, to have both development and a true conservation easement subdivision until they came along years ago with the way to do a package plant or community septic, which has been proven to be effective everywhere, and it's actually being recommended as a very fail-safe method. What this allowed was subdivisions like Serenbe that we pointed out and he pointed out, where yes, you do have higher density on a smaller section of the land, but the rest of the land is left in its natural state where you're preserving the most beautiful part of the land. As an example, that beautiful 10-acre horse farm with a house that sits back, if it's sold, the whole thing's become a subdivision from the street on back. If you do it as a conservation easement subdivision, you would have the houses to the back side of it on higher density, but the front part that you see, the barn, the pasture, is all preserved. It's preserved in the covenants. It can never be built on, ever, just as it is in a Serenbe. You could do this with 5 acres, 10 acres, bigger tracts, of which we put together the consortium of the 5 property owners, which was otherwise called Lakapani, of which these 2 properties, the McVeigh and WJ's property, are the 64 acres, of which 35 acres would now be preserved. And I urge you, if you have not walked this property, it is beautiful, 100-year-old hardwoods. They're going to be preserved, and otherwise they legally are under the diameter of a tree that could be cut. They could be cut down. They don't match what is called a true specimen tree. It could all be gone, but it is beautiful woods, beautiful forests, beautiful trails. That's going to be preserved, and they're going to build the 45 houses very discreetly, very nice back from the road, and the rest of the land will be preserved. If a conservation subdivision is not passed with something like this, that entire yard could be turned into the 1-acre subdivisions. You wouldn't have community lands, community trails, community access where you can walk the beautiful trails and preserve the land. I urge you, there's an old saying, you know what Pasquale's wager is? If I believe there's a God and there isn't, I have lost little. If I believe there isn't a God and there is, I have lost much. If you don't overturn the veto and this is not passed, you will have lost much in what could be done to preserve the land in both Milton and Roswell and truly turn it into an idyllic conservation subdivision. But if you pass it and it doesn't turn out to be as perfect as we has liked, you've lost very little because it's only one chunk and then you never have to pass it again or address it again. You can continue to have the 1-acre subdivisions. So I urge you to consider Pasquale's wager and to pass this, because if you don't, or to overturn the veto, you will have lost much, and we will lose all the land that we're trying to preserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Judy, if you please call the next comment.
Next public comment comes from Bernard Wolf.
Good evening. I'm Bernard Wolf. Good to see you all again. Enjoy these meetings. I live at 1000 Lackey Road in Milton, and I've spent 4 years putting together the Lakapani concept. I've shared it too with Roswell and Milton every step of the way from the beginning, and have asked, is there anything in this you all would not approve of, would disapprove? And I've always said, my feedback is not only do we like this, we encourage you to do it. As Vance had said, the Sweet Apple community is along the format we're using for Lakapani. And the essence of that, I'll explain it a different way. They're using small lots. Small lots can be really good, or they can be really bad. The really bad ones are the ones that you have this uproar, where you have these houses crammed together on small lots, and they become urban blight. The other way to execute this is to have a footprint. That's what we call them in Lakapani. You have a green area, and within that, you have footprints where the house goes. And these would be, you'd have a small lot to accommodate that. They're separated. They're not crammed together. And the whole idea is the smaller that footprint, the more woods you have. The idea is you place those houses where if you look out the back of every house, what you'll see is woods. And you'll have a place that you can go take a walk, as I like to do during a long day, where you can go out in the woods and just everything is relaxed for you. The other thing I did want to mention is the water treatment system. I'm in agreement with the concerns everybody has with that. We do need the community systems are proven, they're good, but I think anyone done needs to be something that is going to work and can be monitored by the EPD or Milton. The systems that are being considered here do that. They can be monitored. You can even think they're capable of being subject to have sensors that you can access through modem. Also, as has been said before, these are regularly serviced. You usually have someone on site. The one in Serenbe, I actually have about a 12-slide video that if it comes to that, I can show you, seeing that they're very simple. They're based on 2-inch PVC pipes, very easy to service, and you have an on-site guy that can service it. If anything goes wrong, he said basically you need just a toolbox with some wrenches and some PVC. The pumps involved, the ones I saw, you all may have seen them too, is one looks like a little barn, but the barn's empty except for 2 pumps, and the pumps are things you can buy at Northern Tools or Ace Hardware up in Woodstock. They're readily available. And the other thing is the one that I've seen in Serenbe, do the construction of it where you have tanks. If you have a failure, it's going to be days before it turns out to be a problem. So it's very safe. And the reason that we're interested in those is not higher density to put in a bunch of houses and at a real high level. The reason we're doing it is so you don't have to tear down the woods around a house that you do with the septic tank. The whole idea is to reduce overall density. The lower the density you have in a division, it's been proven, there's several papers at that, it can increase the property value of us, the owner, by 30% or 29%. It increases the value, enhances it, of landowners. It means you can sell your property more quickly as a landowner as well as a homeowner. The other thing this does is it allows you to do a development where you have roads that are more simple, the drainage is taken care of. What this translates into is the development cost is less, and the maintenance cost for the municipality is less. Everyone wins in this. And that's why we call it 21st century development. I have invited everyone to come visit Lakapani. Most of you all have. One thing I want to do, and I'm trying to do, is get the folks that live on Ebenezer Road, they're scared to death about what's going to happen with Sweet Apple. What's that going to do to my property? They don't realize yet that Sweet Apple is adjoining Lakapani, and we've got probably at least three or more miles of trails through these virgin woods that the plan is they're going to see if these people can also have access to them. You know, there are liability issues and other things to do. But we want them to realize that next door, literally, they can walk right down and they'll be able to enjoy what they have. Actually, they will feel it enhances their life experience, their quality of life, by being on Ebenezer Road and have this the Sweet Apple done and then have the Lakapani done in a similar manner in the future. And the final thing I'll say is Lakapani, due to its nature, is basically sequestered by surrounding ridges, and these ridges are flat on top. Some of those may be done in the way that Brightwater's doing them. Others, we have quite a few people that say, I just want to have a place I can escape. We may sell an entire ridge
5
to one
minutes has
person
elapsed.
Where they can do it that way. So that's my comment, and thank you all for what you do.
All right, thank you. Sudi, if you please call next speaker.
Our next speaker is Charlie Bostwick.
Charlie Bostwick, 230 Hammond Drive, Brightwater Homes. I'll be very brief. Just want to thank you all for how much work every one of you is putting into this. Of course, I want to say I oppose the veto and hope you override it tonight. But mostly wanted to make sure I had a yellow card turned in case you have any questions tonight. I'm here for you. And to let you know that we are completely committed, as we have been, to creating a great project for Milton, and hope we have the chance to do that eventually. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sudi, if you'll please call the next speaker.
Our final speaker is Mr. Walter Recook.
Good evening. My name is Walt Recook. I live at 615 Scarlet Oak Trail. Thank you so much for everything you do and for all the efforts you put in for all these meetings. And I understand how some of these meetings can get awful long and lengthy. I, too, attended many meetings that would end at 12:30, 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, and they were never very much fun, and eventually decisions had to be made. I'm not sure if it made any difference whether it was at 2 o'clock or 9 o'clock with some people, whether the decision they liked was made that time or later in the day. Zonings in general are tough. You have to look at not only what you're dealing with, but in many cases, who you're dealing with. I can remember a case very vividly from my Roswell experience where there was a great development on King Road, not far from Brookfield West, and a developer wanted to come in and put a great project, very similar in density and size and lot size and homes and such, is right across the street. And homeowners on Hackett Road and along King Road and Brookfield West, you would thought they were going to be coming in with some type of building that would be of ill repute of some sort. But they fought it, and the developer stood up and said, listen, guys, I hate to say this, but if you don't approve this, I'm going to go to other folks and something's going to happen with that property eventually. And you may have better to have what's in your hand now than what you may have in the future. Well, sure enough, the council went ahead, and I think that was a meeting that lasted until about 2 in the morning. They turned it down. Well, I don't know how many of you have been to Roswell High School, but that's what actually got built at that location. And I'm not going to say those folks on Hackett Road liked what they got built with the ball fields and everything else backing up to them and many of the other things. But the big thing is the developer was a good guy. We as a community need to look at also who we're dealing with, and can you work with that person, not just in the perspective of one project, but where they stand in all the projects. People, when you work with a project, there's going to be situations that come up, and this is one where you don't have perhaps every bit of technology to your knowledge, but there's a lot of things that come about. I remember the first roundabout that got built and how much public objection was to it. I remember sidewalks. Communities didn't want sidewalks because they felt it was going to lead to robberies and break-ins and everything else, and it was found to be something good in a community. I think, again, the first person off the block is always the toughest one. And sometimes knowing that you've got something that's probably going to be less density than what you would have had is probably very worthwhile to look at. And working out the problems with somebody who is willing to work with you, I think, is also a very important thing. Thank you for your help, and thank you for what you do for us.
Thank you. Okay, Sudi, do we have any more public comment?
That's all, sir.
Okay. I'll close the hearing, and Ken will turn it over.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I hope to be able to sort of walk you through some of the procedural steps in this process, and candidly how I've broken it down is I have about 8 slides that I would like to show you, and obviously the public will see them as well. I'd like to walk you through them, and then I want to turn it over to the mayor for obviously the action item that you have in front of you. And then, depending upon how that action item goes, Mr. Mayor, if you will indulge me, I may have some additional slides, again, dependent upon what occurs. All right. So I hope this slideshow will work. And it's because I didn't turn it on. Let me try it now.
Let's just hope your legal ability is better than your
Listen. There are things I'm good at and things I am not good at. So, if we could just turn to the first slide, please, at least just to get me started. All right. So, the first slide is actually a flowchart out of the City of Milton's zoning code. Obviously, a good place to start whenever we're looking at any issue is to go to the source of the zoning authority in Milton in the first place, which is your zoning ordinance. And obviously you can look at the flow chart and you can see all of the various boxes, and I'm certainly not going to read them to you, but if I could direct your attention toward the bottom. Toward the bottom you will see 3 boxes. The middle of one, of course, is blue and indicates the city council, and then the tree sort of divides at that point, and on the right, your left, you'll see approve or defer, and on the left you will see deny or withdraw. And I want to point that out to you because that is going to be very important as we go through the rest of these slides to see that this is, in fact, the guidance that we give to citizens. This is, in fact, the ordinance that you have adopted. And, of course, it anticipates that there are 2 functions the council will take with respect to a zoning, either to approve or defer or to deny or withdraw. If we could go to the next slide, please. Right. So having said that, I think that the Milton Zoning Code is actually consistent with state law. State law also anticipates the tree splits into an approval or denial. The case I have cited in front of you is Harrison versus Arrighetti. And again, I don't want to read everything that I put up here, but I think this is important. So the appellees, in this case, this is an applicant, a property owner, who has a zoning in front of this board that existed that was a product of this case. Application to have their property rezoned having been approved by the Planning Commission, meaning having gone through the process, having received some sort of a recommendation from the Planning Commission, that applicant had a clear legal right to have, in that case, a Board of Commissioners affirmatively dispose of the zoning application, by either adopting the recommendation of the Planning Commission or by rejecting it. Again, the fork at the end of the flow chart, the blue dot box that goes either left or right, just like in Milton zoning code. Approve it or reject it, affirm it or deny it. And this duty is not satisfied by the mere failure of the board to act. All right, and I will revisit this language in just a moment, but I think it's important for you to see that is extremely compelling authority, in my opinion. Going back to the minutes from April 25th, somewhat misleading because we know that actually at the time that this occurred, it was actually April 26th. Nonetheless, humor me, April 25th was when the meeting started. These are minutes from the actual motion that were made. Councilmember Coons moved to approve. A motion to approve. Remember our box again. So now we have a split in the box. The flow chart splits to the approve box. It was a motion to approve agenda item 16086 for 45 lots on 63.57 acres at a density of 0.707 units. I won't read all of it, but the minutes reflect, and I think this is what the video reflects, and what actually occurred is that that motion passed 4-2 with Councilmember Thurman recused. I want you to keep in mind this as well. It was a motion to approve, and as you all know, when you have a zoning agenda, your capable staff has put in that agenda packet an ordinance, because that's the way you adopt zonings in Milton. You do it by way of an ordinance, and that makes a lot of sense. Because why? Because zoning, as we know, is a legislative function of governments, embodied under the authority of the Georgia Constitution, but it is in fact in the nature of legislation. And this motion was to approve that legislation. And in fact, the actual ordinance in your agenda packet that evening, I've actually cut a segment out of the ordinance itself, and it provides in Section 5 that this ordinance shall become effective. Remember, it's the ordinance approving legislation shall become effective upon adoption by the mayor and city council, but that's not all. See, that's not all in Milton, because it's approval by the mayor and city council and the signature of approval of the mayor. So for the legislation to become operative, to become and have the force of law, actually two things must happen. The council must approve it, and the mayor must somehow signify his ratification or approval of it. I'm almost done with this section. The Milton Charter, obviously a good place to look at how we decide procedural issues. The Milton Charter provides that any ordinance adopted by the city is subject to basically 4 outcomes. I will read them to you very quickly. Number 1, the ordinance can be returned to the clerk signed, in which case the ordinance is effective and has the force of law. Number 2, the mayor could return the ordinance to the clerk unsigned, in which case the ordinance is effective and has the force of law upon such return. Number 3, the mayor could decline to return to the clerk at all, in which case, after the mayor has had it for 10 business days, it becomes operative and has the force of law. Or, number 4, the mayor can veto the ordinance, which nullifies or voids the ordinance absent veto override. Tonight, we are here, you are here, this agenda item pertains to Section 3.21C of the Milton Charter. C says, an ordinance vetoed by the mayor, which we know has occurred here, shall automatically be on the agenda at the next regular meeting of the City Council for reconsideration. That is, in fact, what you are here to undertake this evening. Go down to the last sentence. The City Council may override a veto by the mayor and adopt any ordinance, which in this case was an ordinance of approval, that has been vetoed by the affirmative votes of at least 5 council members, not including the mayor. In this situation, given that Councilmember Thurman is recused, the mayor may not vote. Therefore, it would take an affirmative vote of approval to overcome the veto by all those remaining. Rules for the override. I think you deserve to expect from me the procedural rules with respect to what you're about to do, so here they are. Number 1, the mayor may not vote on the override. That is found actually in 2 places in the charter. I'm very comfortable with that. The mayor may not vote. Number two, the mayor should not, in my opinion, make a motion or second on the override because from my position that is too close to effectuating the actual vote, and he should not do that. Doesn't say that in the charter, but I say that it's the best practice. Number three, the mayor may otherwise discuss the item. Nothing in the charter prevents that. The mayor may run this portion of the meeting. Mr. Mayor, I believe that you can. You are not recused. You're not conflicted. You are simply going to honor the charter provision that says you may not vote on the override. So that's the procedure with respect to how I think this could occur. And finally, this is the last slide before I stop, and you then begin to make your decision. What is the effect of a veto override? If you, in fact, override the mayor's veto, the ordinance of approval will become effective and have the force of law. If the veto is not overridden, the veto stands, and the council at that point has neither approved nor have you denied the rezoning, and therefore the zoning must be returned to the council for further consideration. We can turn the PowerPoint off at this point. Mr. Mayor, at this point I would return the meeting obviously back to you, and I do have some additional slides depending upon what the effect of the override is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ken. And first off, I want to say, as a lot of you know, and Ken and staff, it was a long and hard decision. It was a tough decision to make, especially, quite honestly, since I was on the losing side of the vote, if that makes sense. I certainly wanted to do it for the right reasons and not because I had voted differently on that. But not to belabor that, I think the statement I sent out pretty much clarifies everything. There was just, in my opinion, and I think a lot of others, too much question, and I'll leave it at that. But I believe it's the right thing to do as far as the city's perspective, both the applicant and those for and against this application. So I appreciate that and everybody's time on that. I'll open up for questions or comments to Ken or a motion. Matt? Joe?
Yeah, so I just want to be clear, Ken, you had a slide up that said if we were to not be able to override the veto, that in essence no action in effect has taken place on the applicant's proposal for rezoning. So we go back to where we were before the meeting of the 25th in regards to this particular rezoning proposal. Is that correct?
Councilor Longoria, that is correct, and again, depending upon what the council's action is, I plan on walking you through exactly what I think happens next, but yes,
okay.
That is correct.
The second question that I have is, do we, under normal procedures, we take minutes and we publish those minutes prior to the start of some meeting in the future that basically documents everything that we did.
Yes.
When we put together the minutes, do we normally give ourselves some kind of a score that shows how well we did in the meeting? We followed all the rules. We made some mistakes. We did this many things that were absolutely in error. Do we give ourselves any kind of a grade?
I'm not aware of any grade like that, Councilman Longoria, no.
But I mean, we normally follow the rules, right?
Yes, we do.
Okay. We have a high standard for trying to follow the rules. Is that correct?
I absolutely believe that to be true.
So, can you point to any mistakes that we made in the meeting on the 25th that would have some type of an impact on the decision that we made as a council?
Well, I think there's two ways to answer that question. Could I address anything with respect to the meeting on the 25th that I have any concerns about? I would prefer, because I have advised you on that in my capacity as your city attorney within the context of some of the issues that have been raised by other parties, within the context of potential scrutiny that may be brought to our decision. I would prefer not to go into those details if that would be agreeable to the council. From the standpoint of the information that you received, from from the standpoint of the discussion, I thought the issue was fully vetted, Councilmember Longoria.
Yeah, and I guess that was an unfair question, Ken. And what I should have asked you is, can you point to any procedural problems that we had where we didn't follow either the rules that govern our meeting or the proper voting procedure to make that decision?
Well, let me address it this way.
Okay, if I'm still ambiguous in the way I'm saying that, I'll just withdraw.
Well, I will say this, though. I will say this because I think it is a fair question on this point. First of all, and you all know I believe this, I am an advocate for spirited debate. I am one of these local government lawyers that get weary of governments that come in on something controversial and have a clinical antiseptic 10-minute nothing and then take action, where the citizens are left wondering where the actual decision was made because it doesn't seem to have been thoroughly deliberated and discussed there. So I hope you understand that that's my position. So candidly, I find no flaw at all in a long, lengthy, protracted, watching the sausage get made meeting. I think that to the citizens of Milton, they should be proud that you're willing to actually let the deliberation process take place in front of them. All right? With respect to the multiple motions that were made that evening, I'm terribly comfortable with the motions that were made. There were multiple motions made. Some of them were denied and some of them were tied, and I am extraordinarily comfortable that the information you have received, not only that evening from me, but also in subsequent communications, has revealed to you that that is fine, that the way we handled those was fine. I'll leave it with that, Councilman Longoria.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.
So if the veto stands, it does not act as a denial. Basically, as Councilman Longoria said, it comes back before us. Is that correct?
That is correct.
At what time, when would that deliberation take
Nobody
place?
wants me to get to the remaining slides that I have on this, but it is, and depending upon what you do, and that's the reason I held those slides back, because obviously, you know, I don't know what
Sure.
the council is going to do, but if it has in fact occurred, it is going to be my recommendation of the public hearing. We'll run a legal ad for it, and I can see it coming back on or around June 20th.
Okay.
Anybody else? Okay. I'll, any questions, Matt?
If we're done with discussion,
Bill? Okay. Rick? Joe?
Yeah, so, all right, so we've got our questions answered. We need to take a vote. Somebody's going to need to make a motion. The only thing that I wanted to say before that is that the meeting on April the 25th, there was nothing simple about it. There was nothing easy about it. However, when I got elected as a city councilman, I expected meetings like that. I knew that what I was signing up for included difficult decisions that weren't going to have clear, support or people being against, that were going to be very difficult to understand, and we're going to have a lot of passion on both sides of the potential outcome. So I actually enjoyed the meeting on the 25th. I thought it was exactly what Ken said, a great example of how the sausage gets made. And I mean, that's what this government is about. That's what we voted for Milton for, was to have local control, to be able to get into a meeting and to be able to talk like that and to be able to see the passion that citizens bring to the table. And let me tell you, we listened to 2.5 hours of people that had a lot of passion, okay? Now, after that, we deliberated. We asked an unbelievable number of questions, and I'll raise my hand and take the blame for a good number of those questions. But I think we were trying to drill into the facts, and I think we did a good job of drilling into the facts. I think we did a good job of coming up with something that we could actually vote on in, not necessarily in support of, but something that we could vote on where we could get a majority to go to one side of the decision. Because I want to say there were 7 votes that night, 6 of them ended in a tie. and only one of them ended in a decision with regards to this matter. So, from my point of view, I have confidence in what we accomplished that night. I have confidence in the way we managed ourselves for the meeting. I have confidence that we followed the rules. I have confidence that the decision we made was legitimate by all measures. And so, while I also have confidence that Mayor Lockwood is doing in what he thinks is right, I'm in support of vetoing or overriding the veto because of the confidence that I have in the rest of the procedures and the rest of the members of the council.
Okay. Anybody else? Bill?
Maybe further to Joe Longoria's comments here too. Wanted to bring something up to the city attorney. There have been questions out there as to whether or not due process was served on the 25th and on the 26th. What's your definition of due process, and do you think we complied with that legal concept?
Right. So at its core, due process is the opportunity to meaningfully participate. Typically, it has at its base the notion of notice and the opportunity to be heard. The zoning procedures law in the state of Georgia sets forth the minimum standards by which zonings must be enacted. Typically involves both parties on both sides of a zoning to come up and have no less than, I believe it's 10 minutes per side. The city council did more than that, a lot more than that. And so certainly provided an opportunity for those in opposition and those in favor to address the council. I believe the council made at least one or perhaps multiple extensions of time, and I think we even at one point reopened the hearing back up to allow a few minutes left by the opposition to ensure that they were able to exhaust all of their time. So if you're asking me, was due process observed from the standpoint of the zoning procedures law and notice and opportunity to be heard, I believe that it was.
Thank you. Maybe further to Joe's comment also about having vetted this issue for 6.5 hours, and the city attorney likened it to the process down the state legislature of watching sausage being made. If this was an easy decision to have made, we would have made it probably in the first 5 minutes. Like Joe, I came on this board here several years ago knowing that it wasn't going to be an easy process either. We've come up against some difficult issues here in the last several years, and I think we've all paid equal amounts of time in deciding and discussing these issues. And to state that it's anything other than that, I think that's a misstatement. I think I can speak for all of us here, but I'll speak for myself. I think we've done a better than average job here of serving the public and serving the issues that have come in front of us. And I'd challenge anybody to speak otherwise. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Matt?
Yes, I'll go. I concur with both Bill's and with Councilman Longoria's statements. That was not an easy night. 6.5 hours debate is something that we came here to do, to make tough decisions, to do what we think is right, and to try to find ways to solve solutions. And that was a night I'll never forget, because I give everybody credit as far as that entire debate that we had, and the staff as well, our residents, for communicating, for everybody trying to solve an issue that we might have with many different sides and varying viewpoints of that. We all have different concerns, we all have different perspectives, and ultimately we had to come down to a conclusion that would either accept or deny a certain direction with regards to where the city is going to go. As we went through that, I felt that my decisions where we were granted, I was in favor of the idea and the concept as a whole. I had no idea what the final process would look like. Obviously, I knew that as we discussed that and we looked at objectives and we looked at ideas, we came to a conclusion that at 12:30 at night, I didn't sleep that whole night. The adrenaline was going way through that. I thought that was an exciting chance in my mind to move our city in a direction that would benefit all of our residents. So I concur with Councilman Lagoria's words. I'm proud of what we did that night, and not so much of the decision in of itself, but the way we got there. And I commend this council for having done that. And while I understand the mayor's concerns on the veto, and I respect that wholeheartedly, I still feel that as a council we did a good enough job. Now, could we have done better? There's always room for improvement in everything we do. Every single organization has that opportunity. But with what we did that night, considering the subject matter and how hard it was, I just want to say it was a great job. And for that, I think I will vote for overriding this veto as well.
Okay.
Well, since we're talking about doing what everybody thinks is the right thing, mine's short and sweet. If we always strive to do the right thing and go over and above the minimums, I support keeping the veto in place and doing this thing over again. And outcome may or may not change, I don't know, but at least there's no doubt that anybody's mind can say we haven't given it the due process.
Okay. Rick?
I guess I should say something everybody else has said. From my standpoint, I guess I concur with what people have said. I think I've seen a lot of different notes. We've heard a lot of different comments and public comment. That was not an easy evening, and I think there was due consideration. And as Bill had stated, if it was an easy decision or if we really didn't believe in participative government, we could have waited, listened to the 2.5 hours of public comment, and voted in 10 minutes, started our motions. Instead, what we did is we tried to flesh out the questions that we had, tried to really listen to both sides before we came to a motion. So I guess from a standpoint, that's why I asked my question, does this result in a denial, or does it, if we let the veto stand, does it allow us to actually go back and bring it before and possibly clarify some things that we may want to clarify? And I think I heard the answer is yes.
That's correct.
Okay. So my position, I guess, if I make a motion where I support allowing the veto to uphold, it's not because I don't think that we did not go through due process. Mine would be for the reasons that Bert had said and also what the mayor had enumerated. Not because I think we broke any rules or we did not deliberate. It's more just to say, let's bring it back forward, and then there should be no question by anybody in the public that this council really is taking this seriously in the way that we look at any type of zoning, and that we try to do it fair and upfront and open, including clear and honest government. So what I state, if I'm able to make a motion, are we at the point where...
Everybody else is through with comments, so I'll open up for a motion.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to uphold the veto.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Morrig, second by Councilmember Hewitt to uphold the veto. I won't be voting, and Councilmember Thurman is recusing himself.
Point of order, Joe. We're going to get into this thing where if we vote to uphold the veto and we can't, do we need 5 votes to uphold the veto? Because I think the motion needs to be overturn the veto.
What the rules anticipate is a motion to overturn the veto. However, if a motion to uphold the veto passed, which would require a majority of a quorum, then obviously then a motion to override could not succeed.
Did you withdraw your second? Did you withdraw your motion?
So essentially,
well, what we
should
state the
motion either motion is going to
the consideration.
That's fine.
Right.
then I will.
I think
It-
the-
yeah,
I think
I would
my
be
reasons-
comfortable with either because
I think
obviously
the-
the net result is the
Yeah,
same.
I think the point's well taken, the intended motion.
Yep. So,
All right, I'll open up for a motion.
Mayor, I move that we
You okay
approve.
with Matt? Okay, go ahead,
Sorry.
go ahead.
No, you're rolling.
Hey, I think we all know what's gonna happen. I move that we overturn the veto by the Mayor of Milton.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Longoria for, to overturn the veto, and a second by Councilmember Kuntz. Again, I will not be voting, and Councilmember Thurman is recused, so, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay.
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 Okay. So, Sweetie, did you get the vote? Do you want to clarify that vote?
I can. Well, given the outcome of the vote, obviously there were not 5 votes in favor of overturning the veto. Therefore, per your charter, the veto stands. Therefore, I can get to do the rest of my PowerPoint presentation. So if Mr. Mayor, if you will permit me, may I walk through these last slides to at least provide some procedural clarity on what happens next.
Okay.
All right, so at this point, per the charter, the veto by the mayor has not been overridden, therefore the veto stands. Case law provides that a veto works to void, or I use another word, nullify the proposed enactment that was the subject of a veto. And of course, I have already walked you through what that enactment was. It was an ordinance of approval of the rezoning, which has now stands defeated. That ordinance of approval, and of course Webster's dictionary defines a veto as the refusal to assent to a legislative bill so as to prevent enactment thereof or cause reconsideration, or to cause reconsideration. And of course there's nothing special about Webster's 11th edition except that your zoning code actually calls it out as the definitive guide for any undefined terms. That's why we referenced it. A veto in ordinance of approval is not the equivalence of an affirmative act of denial. The veto, if not overridden, nullifies the action taken by council. It does not replace that action with an affirmative resolution or motion of denial. The Milton Charter is very clear that it is an affirmative vote of a majority of the council that is required to adopt an ordinance, resolution, or a motion, to include a motion of denial. That has not occurred. Georgia Attorney General opining in the negative as to whether a 3-3 tie vote by a local government worked to defeat a zoning. The Attorney General appropriately noted, just as it takes 4 votes to pass a proposal, it requires 4 votes to deny a proposal. That denial has not occurred with respect to the zoning application. Both the Milton Zoning Code and the Zoning Procedures Law both anticipate specific acts of denial, neither of which have occurred here. I won't bore you with all the details, but just understand it does talk about denial or defeat as used in the Zoning Procedures Law by the local government, an affirmative action that has not been taken yet. I go back to our best Georgia precedent. You've already seen it before, Harrison versus Arrighetti. I want you to focus on the notion of a clear legal right. Hope everybody sees it down in the 3rd line. A zoning applicant has a clear legal right to have the commissioners or the city council, in your case, either approve or deny the matter. Why did I focus on clear legal right? Because clear legal right is the language of mandamus. Whenever the court starts talking about governments having clear legal obligations to take certain action, that is in the vernacular of mandamus. Mandamus is a legal vehicle that can be used by someone who is aggrieved by the failure of a public officer or entity to take action for which it is otherwise required that they take action. Here in zoning, it is the fundamental area of legislation where you have discretion. Therefore, hypothetically, if an applicant was to sue the council in mandamus to compel you to take action, a judge would not declare that you have to vote one way or the other, approve or deny. A judge would simply declare this: you have to do something. You have to either approve it or deny it. Why? Because the applicant has a clear legal right to it. I go back where I started. At the end of our tree, in the flow chart of the zoning code of Milton, there is a crossroads by the city council. A veto does not act as a de facto denial because it takes the council to deny. It takes the council to approve. And at this point, given the veto that has not been overridden, the council has done neither. Therefore, it is my recommendation that we re-advertise for another public hearing with this matter to return to the city council for further consideration consistent with the following timeline. We will run a legal ad. We will have first presentation on June 6th and another public hearing on June 20th. And if you are inclined to do that, Mr. Mayor, I would request that direction be given by way of a motion and vote to me.
Okay, I'll be glad to open up for a motion. Second. Matt?
So I guess I make a motion that we advertise for another public hearing with this matter to return to the council for further consideration consisting with the following timeline: June 6th, the first presentation, and June 20th, the zoning public hearing and ratification.
Second motion.
Okay, all right, I have a motion.
Thank you.
From Councilmember Kuntz, second by Councilmember Morig. Ken, I want to ask, is that your clear answer? You feel, obviously you must, that that's the black and white of it, that the process that it would need to go back through?
That is I think that is the most conservative process. Whether or not another public hearing is absolutely required under the zoning procedures law, we could debate, but I'm trying to give you conservative answers right now. I mean, given some of the concerns that were raised about the April 25th meeting, I am hoping that having another public hearing will at least address some of those concerns to the citizens and those stakeholders who want another opportunity to come and be heard, and that is why I'm making that recommendation.
I do have one question on my own motion, I guess. So, based on what you said earlier, though, at the non-overriding of the veto, then essentially the council is back into the position of basically where we were at 12:30 a.m. on the morning of April 26th.
Yes,
right?
The motion to approve failed.
So if that's where we are now, is there another reason for a first presentation? That's really my only question.
Just because that's the procedures that Milton used. That's the only way. That's just our typical system of doing a first presentation, and it's just the way we do things in Milton. It isn't done that way in every jurisdiction, but there's no reason to deviate now.
Okay.
Anybody else? All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Joe?
Sorry, I've got to ask this question
Please.
again. We had some public comments a little earlier tonight questioning the fact that we don't give enough lead time for certain, for consideration of some of these types of actions. Specifically, I think they were referring to zoning actions. And so I believe we give plenty of notice. I believe we set a standard for cities in our area. Am I wrong in that, Ken? Do we give citizens enough notice to respond to these types of things, or are we somehow shortchanging people that live in this area? In other words, does Roswell give you 6 months to get prepared for a rezoning case? Does Alpharetta give you 7 weeks or something like that? Are we somehow not following a standard?
Right. Well, the short answer is I'm not aware of Milton doing anything less than what our surrounding sister cities do with respect to notice and public participation and the ability to participate in zoning items. The zoning procedures law, again, sets the floor, not the ceiling, and it requires a legal ad be published at least 15 days before there is final legislative action on the zoning. Obviously, by the time as the applicant has come in, undertaken all of their staff review, gone through the CZIM process, gone to the Planning Commission, gone to the council, that has been at that point on several different public hearing agendas. There's been a legal ad run. Candidly, Milton is very aggressive with the use of its website. A lot of folks get all of their information now on the web, on the internet. I think Milton does a excellent job of advertising and keeping its citizens in the know, from everything from how robust your web presence is, candidly, to the fact that you put all of your agenda packets and documentation online. Many jurisdictions do not do that in Georgia. So your citizens actually get to see the same packet that you have in front of you, which is somewhat rare. It's becoming more common in the urbanized metro jurisdictions, but you get farther out of there and no one's doing that. So,
all right. Bill?
Further to that point, and more specifically to this case and where this case is right now, then, in the normal course of events, applications go through a series of different boards and commissions out there. The DRB, Planning Commission, then finally with City Council, with the first presentation, then with the final hearing, 2 meetings thereafter. Since the proposal is to restart this whole process over again, and we're out of that normal cycle of going through the different reviews here. Just to, and I know this is a unique case, or at least it is for me, it's the first one I've heard. Would you recommend that this case be advertised ASAP?
Yes, I mean, and it will. I mean, we will run the legal ad very quickly for the June 20th public hearing, and try to get that in the next available publication in your legal organ. Absolutely. Yes, sir. And of course, in addition, I know that people may find this unsatisfactory, but the reality is when we discuss this protocol in an open session like this, the video's available online, the minutes are available online. There's a lot of mechanisms by which citizens can really become informed about what we're doing, because this council is not attempting to hide the ball with respect to any of this. This is all, in fact, this slideshow was an opportunity for everyone to see information that you all know. So,
Ken, point of clarification, obviously I did not vote on the veto override or lack of it, but
yes, sir.
Obviously on this motion.
Absolutely.
I would state, and council members may feel differently, being ultra conservative, would like to see some more time with advertising this and whatnot, but that's my opinion. So if I don't support this motion, that's no reflection other than that. No
right.
reflection
Okay.
on the applicant or the process.
Mr. Mayor, right. So that's right. I checked with the clerk and asked for the time by which we could get this back on a public hearing that would be probably the most aggressive from the standpoint of meeting the deadlines of the legal organ, the publication dates, et cetera. There's nothing magical about June 20th. If there would be an interest in moving it further back than June 20th, you could do that, but that was what I came up with.
Okay. Let's see, Rick and then Joe.
Yeah, I guess that was a question I had. And just to state my opinion, I think in fairness to the applicant, I don't see a need to actually push this further back because we've already vetted. I'm just trying to understand from the formality, first presentation, that we really have heard first presentation and we've gone through zoning, but what you're recommending is to allow another zoning instead of us picking back up where we finished at 12:30 and starting up. You're saying another zoning affords the public to express their opinion. It also affords the applicant to come forward and to review their case with us also.
Yeah, that's right, and I want to just be mindful a little bit of the nomenclature. It's not another zoning. I mean, we're within the context of the same zoning.
Okay.
This is simply a conservative opportunity for yet another public hearing from a due process perspective to allow citizens to come in to the extent there was frustration or concern with respect to the April 25th meeting, then let's use this opportunity to do another one and allow folks to come in and have another opportunity, and perhaps they will see a meeting that they're more comfortable with.
So the June 6th first presentation really is just, that's the first notice. It's going on the docket again as a zoning hearing on the 20th.
That's correct.
It's the same zoning case.
Same zoning case.
Okay.
Okay, Joe?
No, I'd say let's give the applicant their clear legal right to a decision. So let's just make it happen.
Matt?
Just one other question as well, and obviously during the course of that April 25th meeting, there were a lot of discussions going into a decision that we made, versus the number of homes or the setbacks or all these different details of which were there. None of that goes away. That still is attributable to part of our decision as regards to how we re-evaluate on the 20th. So if the applicant came forth as anything different or whatever, he's afforded that right. As citizens, if they want to have expressed an opinion, they're afforded that right. Everybody, again, basically just starts back where we left off to come before us. But all of those particular points can be used to transfer from a decision from April 25th on to June 20th to make a decision.
I mean, I think that should be anticipated. I mean, I don't have to tell the council what some of the concerns expressed were with respect to the April 25th meeting. And I think that to the extent that the applicant wants to come and make the same presentation, or perhaps revert back to what was originally within the application, I think that's going to be up to them.
Okay. Anybody else? So refresh me. We have a motion and a second. Who made the motion?
Councilmember Coons.
Okay, Councilmember Coons, and who actually seconded that? Okay, and again, I just being ultra conservative, I would prefer to have some more time. So again, if I don't approve this motion, that's my reasoning. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I abstain.
So, and Councilmember Thurman abstains. Okay.
Thank you, council members.
All right, Sudi, if you'll please call the next item.
Next item is consideration of a waiver of conflict, affirmatively waiving any actual, potential, or apparent conflict of interest arising from or attributable to Gerard and Davis LLP's simultaneous representation of the City of Milton and Tennell Spangler and Associates, TSW, as a subcontractor to TSW in a matter unrelated to the City of Milton. Agenda item number 16119, Mr. Kendroy.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you very much. Just, whenever we receive an assignment, and in this case it was the review of an agreement that the City of Milton may be entering into with Tennell Spangler, we do a conflict check, as we do with all of our activities and all of our new matters that we receive. And my office is actually working in another jurisdiction, in another municipality, and we are preparing and presenting a bid on some work in another jurisdiction, and I believe Tennell Spangler and Associates is actually bidding along with us. So we don't have any sort of attorney-client relationship with them, but we are in a business relationship with them. So I thought it best to bring a conflict waiver to you. I can represent to you that our review of the contract will be zealous. We will look out for the City of Milton's best interest. There will be no quarter given to this entity just because we happen to be working together on another project, and I would respectfully request the council take consideration and give due consideration to waiving any potential conflict, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Any questions for Ken on that? I always appreciate you being up front and
thank you.
Being conservative on that. If not, I'll open up for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve agenda item 16-119.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion for approval from Councilmember Hewitt, second from Councilmember Coons. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimous. Okay, we'll move on to reports. Anything the council wants to report on?
Just wanted to reiterate what Bill does for Memorial Day. Great thing, and anybody that can have a chance to get there, it's definitely worthwhile. So always glad to do that. And you're putting up crosses.
Crosses.
This Sunday? This is coming Sunday. So anybody wants to help put up markers as far as that goes, then I think that that would be an opportunity for people to participate in the holiday.
Yep, that's a great thing. So thank you. All right, staff, is there anything you want to report on before we go to executive session?
We do not.
Okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn into executive session to discuss employment, possible litigation, and then litigation?
So moved.
That's fine, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Second.
Okay.
Did I jump the gun?
You didn't. You're perfectly fine. Forgive me.
All right.
Am I okay to vote on all these?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right. I have a motion from Councilmember Longoria, and I think second from Councilmember Hewitt. Sure. Okay.
Doesn't matter.
On All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous.
Constitution. All right, motion to reconvene.
Second the motion.
So moved.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, so meeting is reconvened.
I'll move.
We have a
Got one agenda item left.
one agenda item, that's right.
Good try, though. I like that trial close.
Pull the trigger.
All right, we are reconvened. All right,
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, thank you. This next agenda item, at each of your stations, you should find a settlement agreement and full and final release of claims between the City of Milton, all of our officers and agents, employees, et cetera, and a Mr. Charles E. Ivy, a member of the Milton Police Department pursuant to the Open Meetings Act. I need to articulate to you the substantial terms of this settlement agreement we are entering into. Number one, the City of Milton will pay to Mr. Ivy the sum of $17,000. Number two, refrain from the use of any images of Mr. Ivy on the City of Milton's social media sites. Accept Mr. Ivy's voluntary resignation from the City of Milton effective May 27, 2016, and receive a neutral employment reference, and enter into a mutual confidentiality and non-disparagement agreement subject to the terms of this agreement. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, it is my recommendation that the City Council consider and ultimately ratify the settlement agreement and full and final release of claims I have presented to you this evening.
do we have any discussion? Do we hear a motion?
Go ahead, Bill.
I'll make a motion that we ratify the settlement agreement and full and final release of claims. Second.
Okay. We have a motion by Councilmember Lusk, second by Councilmember Morrig. Do we have any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
I make a motion we adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion second to adjourn. All in favor, please say
Aye.
aye. Any opposed? That's unanimous. All right.